Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. Andrew Musgrave joined by Aaron Stokes. He's back after a weekend of gallivanting once again. We've got a lovely show coming up for you where we will talk through all of Newcastle United's current players and whether we will keep, sell or loan them out this summer. But before we get into that, Aaron, we're going to have to talk about Bryan Mbeumo, maybe offer a little bit of an apology. You predicted, I think it was the 23rd of June. I said on the Monday show that he would be Newcastle United's first big money signing of the summer. I genuinely believe that they were at the front of the queue for him. I got that wrong. You got it wrong. It does happen, ladies and gents, in the world of reporting. I have to say it was more a gut instinct than anything we've been told. What's your feeling on Bryan Mbeumo's future and how he now looks like he's going to head to Old Trafford to join Manchester United?
Yeah, it's been really funny the last couple of weeks talking about how a lot of Newcastle United fans posting messages saying, "Oh, that first David Ornstein Newcastle bit of news is going to be absolutely fantastic," and I think they've absolutely jinxed it because it's safe to say it wasn't a fantastic feeling. Obviously, seeing that the Athletics chief football reporter, reporting that it looks like Manchester United have won the race from, well, that's where he wants to go. Look, it's obviously disappointing. Fantastic talent, one that Newcastle United have admired for a while from afar. And yeah, obviously disappointing. It's a key position they need to fill. I think for a lot of people watching and listening, he would have been their top target. He was our sort of top preference for the role. And look, I mean, that's now Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo, two players Newcastle United like very much. Adding to that Liam Delap, another who they've sort of admired, and they're all off to rivals.
I know you've got a message to deliver to our listeners and viewers in a moment, but just on Mbeumo, he's going to be paid big wages. Our colleague Lee wrote a report that he's going to get a pay rise of ×4 of what he's on at Brentford, which is about £45,000 a week. So that would break Newcastle United's top earner wage bracket, which is something that they're not keen on doing so unless it's for a major superstar. Do you look upon what our colleague wrote and you go, yeah, I can understand why Newcastle United maybe didn't push further on their interest, because when someone comes with those demands, is he really the player that you're going to break the ceiling for?
Yeah, I can understand it, and I think it's sort of part of the PSR world and these new sort of Premier League rules that people forget actually is that, you know, you only have to have a certain amount of your turnover being spent on wages. We've seen clubs like Villa really get themselves into bother with it. We also know that clubs like Chelsea and Manchester United, because of the players that are already in their squad, the revenues that they're bringing in, they can offer these players probably bigger wages than Newcastle can at the minute. This summer certainly does look like it's going to be one where Newcastle do start to maybe try and expand and increase that wage budget and trying to get a few more of these sort of big name players, as you mentioned, in on big wages. But you can also understand club chiefs saying, well, you know what, you're on less than 50 grand a week at Brentford. You wanted probably close to 200 grand at Newcastle at this stage of the journey, which you can't offer you that. And Manchester United obviously can.
It makes a mockery, doesn't it, of the PSR rules in many ways, that Manchester United, without European football finishing so low in the table, can still spend all this money.
All that debt as well, you've got to think.
Yeah, interesting that Bruno Fernandes has reportedly turned down a big money move to Saudi Arabia, which would have brought in £100 or so million for Manchester United. We're going to be watching closely what they do, I guess, before the end of June to see if they have to sell somebody to make these moves work.
Well, certainly what you hear about Manchester United is that they do need to sell, and I think everybody sort of thought that this Mbeumo and Cunha double deal would lead to Bruno Fernandes going. I mean, look, yeah, I know he's looks like he's rejected Saudi Arabia, but you know, I probably wouldn't rule out him maybe going somewhere else. He says he's still got, you know, stuff to offer at the top level, which I think we'll all agree he has. But if he doesn't go and if he does want to stay and that's where he chooses to stay at Old Trafford, then it looks like it's going to have to be Garnacho. It's going to have to be Marcus Rashford. Dare I say it's going to have to be Amad Diallo. It's going to be all these players. But you do suspect even if Bruno stays, Manchester United are still going to have to get rid of a lot of players this summer.
Just finally on Mbeumo, some reports that it was his age as well that came to Newcastle United's thinking that at 25, maybe he's a year or so older than they'd like to be spending that amount of money on a player. Where do you stand on this? Because I get it in one sense, but on the total other hand, it does baffle me slightly. Is 25 really too old to be spending 65, 70 million pounds on a player?
Well, if 25 is old, then me and you are absolutely cooked, aren't we? So we're very much over the hill. Look, we know Eddie Howe and we know the club more widely from above. I've always tried to aim for these players that are sort of 24 and under. We've seen it with Anthony Gordon and Sandro Tonali and Alexander Isak and all these players. When they joined, they were still pretty much fresh-faced players. Yes, they'd been and done it in the Premier League and across Europe, but we know that Newcastle are trying to build for the long term. Now, personally, I don't think 25 or 26, in a couple of months' time would be too old for a player like that who's, you could argue is still yet to reach his peak. But look, if the club think that it's not worth spending the money on, then you've got to back them. Every single decision they've got right so far. But yeah, it's a massive shame. Look, we've spoke so much about how much they need to strengthen at right wing, and Mbeumo ticked a lot of boxes. Obviously, he's so consistent. His goals and assist record stand up against pretty much anyone in the league the last couple of seasons. But yeah, unfortunately, I think we're probably going to have to get used to some of those this summer.
Where did they go next?
Look, I think the one thing we know about Newcastle United is, yes, one, they will always go back in for targets that they like, but two, they will have had backups to Bryan Mbeumo, and if Bryan Mbeumo very much was their number one, they will have had contingency plans in place. We know that these plans have been essentially rubber stamped for 3 or 4 months. We know that they've got a range of scouts across Europe, looking at Bundesliga talents, Liga 1 talents, La Liga talents. In terms of who they go next, I don't know, because I obviously said very boldly last week that June 23rd they were going to sign Mbeumo. As you said, it was pretty much just, us maybe being a little bit hopeful rather than anything concrete. But I don't know where they go next. Looks like someone who's under 25.
Anthony Langer?
Yeah, potentially. Look, they had their offer, that 11th hour offer, dismissed, didn't they, last summer, which everyone thought looked a little bit crazy at the time. He's had a fantastic season with Forest. Yeah, potentially you'd probably be able to get him a little bit cheaper than Bryan Mbeumo.
Let us know in the comments where you would like to see Newcastle United turn to next. Your message now into viewers and listeners, and I guess to me as well, because I did text you yesterday saying I'm getting a little bit worried here. When you said you're only 3 days into the transfer market, Andrew, and your message was calm down.
Yeah, well, I think that is generally my message just to every Newcastle United fan. We are on the 3rd of June, the transfer window. The first transfer window has only been open 3 days. It is going to be a long summer. If you are getting exhausted and frustrated and tense 3 days in, then I don't know how you're going to last until the end of August. Keep calm. Newcastle United have never let us down in the post-takeover era with their signings. They will get it done. Do not worry. Do not stress. Go outside, touch some grass, hug your loved ones. Don't be worried about it 3 days in the transfer window.
I did text our colleague Chris Watt at the Athletic saying, "Wake me up come September the 1st," because I just can't handle the transfer market. And we are looking around and seeing other teams make moves. I mean, just finally on the transfer market, Bryan Mbeumo off to Manchester United. Cunha, okay, the interest probably wasn't as far down the line or as big in him, but he's gone to Manchester United. Delap, we know that they did hold some sort of talks, or at least made their interest known. So essentially, we'll say 2 players have chosen to go elsewhere. Does that raise concerns for you?
No, because look, in all of our eyes and everyone listening and watching this, Newcastle United is the be all and end all. It's, such an attractive club to join. There's, 10 reasons why you would join Newcastle United over Manchester United. But I'm not too worried about Manchester United and Chelsea signing these players because they're legacy clubs. They can offer a lot more money. Sort of similar to when Dan Ashworth left, I could sort of understand why he did it, because I think the chance to restore that club generally is probably an attractive proposition to some players. So yeah, I'm not too worried. I'm very, very intrigued to see how Manchester United and Chelsea go about the next month trying to balance the books. But look, I'm not going to lose any sleep over other teams signing Newcastle targets. I believe they're gonna be all right this summer.
There we go, ladies and gents. Aaron Stokes installing a bit of calmness into the world of Newcastle United. Okay, it's our turn then to do a keep, sell, or loan episode, and we've got our lists here. And I have to say, the first thing that springs to mind, and I mentioned this on the Monday show, is Newcastle's lack of sellable assets who you would be glad to see going. I have, without mentioning any names, I've got 4 written down on my sell list, and that's it.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but 1 would be going on a free. So yeah, 5 I've got.
Yeah, which does raise a few concerns, and it's probably the legacy of maybe Mike Ashley's time in charge, where they haven't got those players to sell. Those who want big contracts, obviously, their value runs down. Shall we start though with the keep list? Because I imagine we're probably all going to be on board.
Yeah.
With their suggestions. So Isaac, Bruno,
Yeah.
Tonali.
Let's go position wise.
Position-wise, okay.
Position-wise. That's the way I've written mine
Okay,
down.
so shall we start then? Instead of going keep, sell, alone, we'll start with the position. So we'll run with you because I've gone keep, sell, alone on my list. You'll have to go and read them out. So I'll let you take the wheel.
Okay, so goalkeeping department, I have gone for keep Nick Pope.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Links to Leeds United. Yeah. I mean, if someone came in with a crazy bid, I could be tempted. But at this moment in time, I think Newcastle United would be quite happy to see him as number one for next season. And that means you can put the money elsewhere. We know that the budget is there, but it's not going to be massive, is it? So they're going to have to be clever in where they put their pounds. So yeah, keep Nick Pope unless it's a crazy bid.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I've got two sells here. I think Martin Dubravka, maybe time to say goodbye.
We don't even know, like, is his contract up this summer? Because when it was announced he was signing an extension,
there was a lack of clarity, wasn't there, from Newcastle's statement? I'm pretty sure, I mean, we'll have to double check it, that he is still under contract with Newcastle until next season.
How much are you going to get from him if you're selling them?
Pennies. I mean, what are they signing for? 4 or 5 million?
Lucky to me,
probably close to a decade ago. I mean, he's 36. I want to say now, 36 as of Feb. As of Jan. Yeah, I think you're getting $1 million tops.
Who else have you got going out on the goalkeeper department?
I've got Odysseus Flakademos going, which is probably no surprise. I think he needs to be sold. I don't think it was a move that Newcastle United really wanted to do. It has obviously worked out very, very painfully. He's only played 45 minutes of competitive football. And then I've got two question marks alongside John Ruddy and Mark Gillespie. And the question marks represent, what should we call it, indifference. If John Ruddy was to go tomorrow, I wouldn't lose any sleep. If John Ruddy was to stay behind the scenes, I've got no problem with it. So I've only got 3 players on that indifferent list, and 2 of those.
Essentially, one of them goes and one of them stays, isn't it? Between Ruddy and Gillespie, I can't see both going.
Yeah, but I could see both staying.
All right. Well, I mean, with Dubravka, you are right. His contract according to transfer market is up at the end of next season, so maybe you could fetch maybe 2 or 3 million for him. But I could see Dubravka staying, if I'm totally honest. Alongside,
have you got him keeping? Are you keeping him?
I had a kind of a question mark next to him. It was either way, but I could see him staying. Vlachodimos goes. One of Ruddy or Gillespie goes. It'd be interesting though if Newcastle United go out and bring back Fraser Forster or Tim Krul.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, do you think that's going to happen? Which one would you prefer? And if it does happen, does that then affect your markings?
Look, there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there? Obviously those you mentioned. There was also
Freddie Woodman.
Freddie Woodman was another one. He'd just been let go by Preston. Out of those that you've named, I think I would go Fraser Forster. I think he's probably still the one where he's probably still at that level. Whereas Tim Krul, he's probably, hate to say it, over the hill. Freddie Woodman. Freddie Woodman had a very good start at Preston, didn't he? But unfortunately, he's sort of tailed off. I think I would be going for Forster though.
Interesting. So if one of them does come in, who does that impact? Are you then saying, you keep Pope, you keep one of Ruddy and Gillespie, and then you have one of those?
I think you go, I mean, totally playing Football Manager here. I think you go Nick Pope, a young backup signed, or someone who can rival Pope. So there's 2. Let's just say Forster comes in for that homegrown UEFA quota. There's 3. Ruddy and Gillespie, there's 5. I wouldn't be against that.
So do you think 5's the magic number?
Yeah, I think I will keep 5 again.
Okay, interesting. I think Pope, Dubravka stopping. I could see them bringing in one of those names links. That'd be 3. And then I think it's either Gillespie or Ruddy.
And then you don't think they sign, let's say they sign Fraser Forster, you don't think they then go and get a James Trafford or somebody like that to rival Pope? No,
especially not if they're keeping Dubravka as well. I mean, I just think with the money they've got to spend and the other positions that they have to upgrade on, I think they may
you think it's not a priority?
No, I think they may well roll the dice and say, we know his footwork is awful. It's not going to improve, but just accept it for another year because what he gives in shot stopping and the saves he makes.
He had a very good end of the season.
Yeah.
And I think he may be, how we talk about, it being a big period for some players. We spoke about with Joe Willock. I think Nick Pope needed to end the season well because I think his stock had really sort of fallen when Dubravka was back in the team, and people thought, well, is it time for Pope to go? But I think he came back in and maybe won some skeptical fans back around again.
I
Ended
think
the season really well. I would
they have
be keeping him.
execution maybe for another season, and it just means you can invest elsewhere in the side. In an ideal world, yes, you go out and you spend big on a goalkeeper to improve Newcastle's goalkeeping department, but I just can't see it happening this summer, especially not with James Trafford either, because I think they're just going to have to pay a lot of money, and that would mean diverting resources away from other priority positions into defence then.
Yeah, I've got a lot of keeps here. I would be keeping pretty much every centre back. I'll be keeping Botman, Share, Burn, and Kraft. I would also be keeping Tino, Lewis Hall, and Kieran Trippier. I've got Sell, Matt Target, and I've got one of those indifferent question marks next to Lascelles.
I think Lascelles stops for the next season.
Yeah, which I would be fine with. I've got no problem with that. He's not going to play a major part in the team, as he's there for sort of that dressing room support that Eddie Howe loves. I feel like I'm missing a defender, but I don't know if I am. I haven't got any of the youngsters on this list at
Kraft
the minute.
stops.
Yeah, I will keep Kraft. Really, really solid squad player. Exactly what Eddie Howe wants and needs. Comes into the team, doesn't really put a foot wrong. Great around the dressing room. So yeah, I would be keeping pretty much all of them apart from Matt Target.
And I think, like Nick Pope, I think Kieran Trippier maybe is also won over those fans who suggested that Newcastle should cash in, myself included. Really impressed with him since he came in at the turn of the year, or whenever it was with the injuries to Lewis Hall. I would keep Kieran Trippier now, unless it is a daft bid.
Of what?
Well, his contract ends in the summer, yeah, next summer.
Next summer.
I mean, look, if anyone's bidding £6 to £7 million, maybe.
I don't think you're getting that money. If I'm totally
Well, there you go.
honest.
That's a daft bid, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I think you keep him. He clearly can still do a job, and that experience will be absolutely crucial. But he will not be first choice.
And so you're keeping Kieran Trippier, and I'm assuming you're also keeping Fabian Schär. Has he managed to win you round after
He has, yeah.
talks have not even given him a new deal?
Well, actually, I mean, look, my thoughts on him. I think he won't be first choice come the new season. I think a new right side centre back will come in, and he will be the first choice. Signed a new extension, so he's not going anywhere. And I think I'm in the minority of people who actually would have cashed in and not give him, or would let him go on a free, actually, wouldn't I? Look, he's going to be around, so good for that squad depth. Burn obviously stays. Hall stays. He's just fantastic. So hopefully he comes over that injury that he's had. Yeah, the only one that you would sell out of that back line would be Matt Target, but you're getting pennies from him.
Yeah, a couple of mil at most, maybe.
So you go to Leeds, maybe.
Yeah, one of those clubs he suits, doesn't he? Burnley, Leeds, maybe a club in the top 6 of the champ, maybe. Look, he needs to stay fit. He needs regular game time. I just don't think he's going to get that at Newcastle.
Just such a shame that it didn't work out for him, because that loan spell he had, he was absolutely superb. He still got a contract until next June.
He had some good moments. He had some good spells when he first joined, and I think because he's played so little football in the last season or two, I think it maybe clouds how good he was at the start. I think he was really good when he came in, but
another one that injuries has just hit. But hopefully he's over those injury problems and he can find himself a club. But with a year left on his deal, 5-6 million at most, if we're being
generous.
Okay, so there we go. Onto the midfield. Well, actually, before we go on there, the youngsters, because there are a few youngsters who could crop into the conversation. Alex Murphy being one of them, who spent last season, or the second half of last season, on loan at Bolton. Took a little while, but did end up becoming a first choice. I think he ended up playing most of it at left back. You've got Heffernan as well, who's captain of the under-21s. He is tipped for big, big things. So those are the two names I've got written down here who I think either could play some part in the first team or go out on loan. I think if Alex Murphy goes out on loan, you could probably call time on his chances at Newcastle United. I think, I say at his age, he's only 20, so he's still a young player. But you know what I mean? Like there's moments and opportunities. I think he's got real talent. But do you see him coming back at the age of 21 after another year out? Maybe, potentially. I'm being harsh.
I feel like I get what you're saying. It feels like another loan or another 2 loan deals for him. Does he start to become the category of Joe White, of Kel Watts, where you just think they're just maybe not at that level of ever really breaking into the first team? I must say, for Alex Murphy, he's been He's looked impressive at spells. I remember that pre-season he went to America with them and played really well against Chelsea. He's obviously played Premier League football with Newcastle very, very briefly. I want to say he's played 1 or 2 games. So he, probably of all the youngsters that we're going to talk about, is probably the closest to have actually been in Eddie Howe's plans in recent years.
He played in when did he play? He played in the League Cup. He did.
I'm sure he came on against Everton in the Premier League.
Not this season, he didn't.
Last season.
Maybe last season. But he did impress. Whatever game it was, he did impress. I would like to see him get an opportunity, but he would be behind Lewis Hall if he's playing at left back. If he's going to stay at centre back, he'd be behind quite a few people there, plus the new centre back to come in. So opportunities are going to be limited.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably that age where he does need first team football to continue his development. And like I say, he went on loan to Bolton. He played 13 times, scored 2 goals. It's one of those. It's a crossroads, isn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what to do with him this summer, because as you say, it does sort of feel like does another loan deal maybe close the door, or does it have the opposite effect and he goes and does what Elliot Anderson does at Bristol and think, you know what, he can come back in next season when maybe Cher and Byrne are a year older and a year slower.
How old was Elliot Anderson when he went to Bristol? He wasn't 20, was he? Because he's only 21 now, so a little bit younger. But yeah, and the other one, as I said, Heffernan, who captains the under 21s. He's a really decent player.
Yeah.
And we
signed by from
again 20 years of age. Maybe I'm being harsh on Alex Murphy.
Yeah. If I'm honest, I thought Heffernan was maybe a year or 2 younger. I would be loaning him out rather than. I don't think he's got any sort of first team credentials at this stage.
Does the fact though about building a Champions League squad, does it mean that maybe some of these youngsters might find a route in? Obviously, there'll be the
quotas to hit,
yeah, but also there'll be the youngsters Champions League competition as well.
Yeah, the UEFA Youth League.
Don't know what the ages are for that though. Is there a certain age cap limit on it?
Yeah, there is. I mean, last time Newcastle were in the Youth League, Heffernan played. Murphy didn't. Alex Murphy didn't. Not that I'm aware of, but Heffernan definitely played all 6 of the group games, I believe, alongside Charlie MacArthur, who was also on loan last season. So yeah, I mean, at 20, surely you'll be able to play in that competition.
Let us know in the comments your thoughts, and we'll head into the midfield.
Yep. So I've got a couple of sells here, but I think I'm also going to maybe put a few question marks as well in terms of who I'll keep. Fairly obviously, Bruno, Lewis Miley, Joelinton, Sandro, most definitely. And then I've got sell next to both Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock.
He's been converted, ladies and gents.
So obviously, pretty much 12 months ago, we sat in this exact room and we sort of had a bit of a ding-dong, didn't we, about Joe Willock. You were very much sell. I was very much, he's still got time at Newcastle. I don't think both of them will go, but I've put them both down as sell, but I would maybe think one of them will stay.
We were having this conversation in the office yesterday while you were still away partying. Given the quotas that you need to meet for the Champions League squads, does that impact what the club might do with Sean Longstaff?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm literally just about to put a piece out on this afternoon. Newcastle need to have 4 homegrown players who were at the club for at least 3 years between the ages of 15 and 21. As it stands, from my understanding of looking through that squad this morning, I think Sean Longstaff is the only player at the minute that fits that bracket, senior player that is, over 21. Somebody like Fraser Forster would coming back in would have met that. Paul Dummett obviously met it. Elliot Anderson met it. So Newcastle really are short of these players, and it means if they can't fit those quotas and have a minimum of 4 players, their squad does have to shrink in terms of senior players for the competition, which very much means Newcastle might keep Sean Longstaff at the club. Now, we understand that there is growing interest in him. Leeds United are one of the clubs that are interested in him. Everton and Manchester United have both kept tabs on him under previous managers, and there is potentially talk of a club as well, like Burnley or somebody coming up, taking advantage of him. I think very much it's quite a fluid situation. Sean Longstaff has a year left on his deal. He's sort of openly admitted that he doesn't really have a feeling either way. He said if he stays, great. If he goes, that's fine. And Eddie Howe, despite not starting him in the league since early December, clearly still likes him a lot and trusts him, and he's been there through thick and thin with Eddie Howe since he joined the club. It might sound controversial, but I think if you had to say keep Sean or Willock, I think I would probably lean towards keeping Sean. over Joe Willock?
I think talent and ability wise, it would be keep
Joe
Joe
Willock,
Willock,
but I
but in
think,
terms of what they need to meet for
and
the
also
Champions League,
and also the money you would get,
yeah,
because Joe Willock is going to bring you probably, you'd imagine on paper, infinitely more money than Sean Longstaff
I
at
don't
this
think
stage in
it'll
his
be
career.
much more money though. But
But Sean Longstaff with a year left on his deal
Yeah.
is going to attract you're going to probably be lucky to get 10 million for him, and that's
But
probably
that's the interesting thing, isn't it? You mentioned there Sean's deal runs out in June of 2026. So it's about looking at and thinking, well, is it more beneficial to have a bigger squad in the Champions League?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we look at that and say we can get 10, 15 million for Sean and it's all profit? Or do we lose him on a free next summer? Because if he stops, I don't see them offering him a new deal. So then you will lose him on the free. So it's about the
It's that
priorities down,
balance
isn't it?
act, yeah.
Now,
100%.
Joe Willock's contract doesn't end until 2027, so there is a bit more value in him. Look, it does not please me to be sitting here saying effectively that I was proven right about Joe Willock, because I want to be sitting here saying he's realised his true potential, because he's got so much ability. But you look at the chance he was given at the end of last season with Joe Linton missing, and he just did not take the chance that was presented. That was his moment to really show everyone what he's about, to shut people up like me, and he just didn't do it. So I can see him going to, we know Crystal Palace are interested, Fulham have been linked. Will they recoup the money they paid for him? I don't think they will. I think 20 million, 22 at best. But I think a lot of people would probably cash in on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to the point that you made earlier in the show about those sellable assets. It's sort of been this running thing at Newcastle for 2 seasons now. They don't actually have that many players that they actually want to sell. You know, yes, they've done really well in the last couple of seasons to sell Elliot Arneson and Yankuba Minter, but they didn't want to sell those players. And I'm not saying anyhow wants to sell Joe Willock, but I just think he's one of those few players that you could maybe lose for a good bit of money and reinvest it well and find somebody better. And I hate to say it because, like I said, I sat in this chair 12 months ago and said I want to keep him. I've said during points of this season, I think he's still got more to give. I said it 6 weeks ago when he came back in the team. So yeah, he's one of the few on the list that I've got down to sell. But
What
I
does
was
that
hesitant to put it
mean
in,
though for midfield? Because of this sell, Joe Willock, a lot of people would say, well, actually, you need to bring in
a
someone
midfielder.
to replace him. And now you've
Yeah,
got Joe White coming back from loan, but is he
Joe
again the
White's
standard that
not at that
Newcastle
level.
United need? No. Looking at the youngsters, I mean, Anthony Munda in the under 18s is a name that is regularly mentioned.
Is Alfie Harrison the man? Is he he's probably the closest, but even then he's talking about a player who, hasn't made a Premier League appearance. Very, very good for the under-21s, but it's a huge step up. So yes, look, I mean the short of options really.
I suppose it's about balance again. Is it you sell Joe Willock for £22 million and then you go out and spend a little bit of that money on someone who's better than him, and if you're getting an upgrade, then yeah, okay, maybe it is worth cashing on Joe Willock and putting that money towards that upgrade.
Yeah, it's a tricky position because look, unless something absolutely remarkable happens this season, you suspect that it will be Bruno, Joel, and Sonali starting. You've got to think about Lewis Miley's future because at the minute his future is sort of becoming stagnant. He hasn't kicked on. Yes, he's had injuries, but he will be wanting more game time. There's clubs that are very, very interested in him. So you've got to keep him happy. Signing another midfielder on top of that who essentially goes above him in the pecking order won't do much for his development. And then obviously you've got Longstaff, who we suspect if he does stay probably won't get much game time. But it's a really, really tricky one this summer. And I think it all depends on what happens with Joe Willock in his future.
Let's say that the midfield, come the start of the season and the close of the second transfer window, remains as it is now. No one goes out, no one comes in. Is that a good enough midfield to compete on all 4 fronts?
Yeah, I think so. I think those 6 who have obviously worked together now for 2-3 seasons at least, they know the pecking order, they know the squad, they know what it means to play at Newcastle United. I think if you keep those 6 and maybe promote somebody like Alfie Harrison to maybe get a little bit more time in and around the senior side, maybe someone like Travis Hearns, maybe someone like Rory Finneran, who was very, very highly rated when he was at Blackburn, then I think you might have enough. I think what you were talking about with the goalkeeping department, I probably think about the midfield is that it's not a priority unless somebody like Joe Willock leaves.
Well, I have got Longstaff and Joe Willock to go.
Mhm.
because I think you can raise important funds there and
Blimey, Isaac
reinvest.
Hayden on the list as well.
Well,
Have you forgotten
yeah.
about
Did you
Isaac
forget
Hayden?
about him? I haven't forgotten about you,
Everybody,
Isaac.
surely, I hate to say it,
June
probably forgot about it.
2026, his contract ends.
Yeah. God, that is the longest contract ever, isn't it?
It's absolutely baffling. Every time I see that written down, it still surprises me. I mean, where's he been?
He's been at
QPR. He was in
He was at
Belgium.
Norwich. He was
wasn't
at Belgium. He's been all over the shop.
Where was he most recently? Portsmouth
Yeah.
on loan. Played 17 times, but he will be back.
Yeah.
You can imagine at the training ground when everyone returns in a few weeks' time. I mean, look, Newcastle just got to cut him loose, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Not going to get any dollar from him. Just cut him loose. He's not the PSR solution, though.
No.
Not going to write that up.
No.
Onto the wingers.
On the wingers, I have pretty easily. I've got keep Jacob Murphy, keep Anthony Gordon, and keep Harvey Barnes.
A lot of people, though, in the last few days have spoken about Anthony Gordon.
Oh, I knew this was coming, yeah.
And suggest that Newcastle should cash in if
No.
Liverpool come in with a big enough bid.
I think the only way I could subscribe to that, and I'm not saying I want to lose Anthony Gordon, but if somebody came to you and said, you've got to lose one of the big guns this summer, and that includes Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, Alexander Isak, Sven Botman, and Joelinton and Anthony Gordon, then maybe I would say Gordon's the one. But as it stands right now, I think Gordon's still got a way to go in this team.
I think Gordon's so important to the success of Newcastle United, and I back Eddie Howe to get Gordon's mind refocused. And there's no doubting he looked a little bit distracted. And when he came back, he didn't take his opportunities, and Newcastle were very accommodating to him. You know, they moved Harvey Barnes out of a position where Barnes was absolutely flying to get Gordon into that side. Didn't quite work out, and I think that's partly the reason people have gone, we'll cash in, because he had a below par into the season, and people have maybe got a little bit of short memories.
People have got recency bias.
Superb in the run up to Christmas and into the new year.
Crucial in those Carabao Cup games towards the
Arsenal.
Obviously didn't play in the final. Really, really, really tricky end of the season from him. He was suffering with quite a bad injury that he picked up in England. He obviously had the disappointment in the Carabao Cup, the sending off, in and out the team, swapping with Harvey Barnes. Needs a good summer, and then come back and be ready to go.
But it's interesting what you say about having to cash in on one of your big players, because I think those conversations will be happening within the boardroom. They'll be reluctant, but it's telling that on our lists, my list, including Isaac Hayden, I've got 4 players who I think Newcastle United can sell. Longstaff, Willock, Target, Hayden. You've got I think you said you had 5 written down there. They're going to recoup the best part of 50 million at most. You know, Longstaff maybe 20 million if we've been hopeful. Willock the same. Maybe Willock 25 and Target 5 million. Okay, so we've been hopeful. But the point remains, they have not got sellable assets, and that's a real issue.
The thing is, and I think it's worth pointing out, is obviously we know Newcastle United's financial picture is a lot rosier than it was last summer and in January in the last 3 windows. But I don't think that means that, you know, the shutters are completely down. I think let's just play hypotheticals for a minute. Liverpool did come back in. Let's say Luis Diaz goes to Saudi and Liverpool came back in with 100 million. I think Gordon would go. I think if, dare I say it, somebody came in with 100 million for somebody like, I'm not saying it's going to happen, Bruno, Joelinton, I don't think the club are scared to do it. But they know they don't have to. I think they can go through this summer without selling any of the big names, but I don't think it means they're not going to. It all depends on what happens. I mean, we spoke about it earlier, we're 3 days in and we're seeing some crazy moves already. There's absolutely nothing to say that clubs won't try and pick some of these talents off. We keep hearing about Sandro Tonali and Italy, even though, you know, it looks like a non-starter, he wants to stay. But there is clearly interest in some of these players. So yeah, really interesting to see. But in terms of sellable assets that you'd be happy to go, and I think it is. It's 4, 5, 6 on the list.
You know, you don't want to sell Isak, you don't want to sell Tonali or Gordon or Barnes, but if it means reinvesting and making the squad bigger and better, I think those conversations will be having had in the corridors, and that's just the nature of football and PSR. And it's frustrating and it's annoying because you want to be building your squad around these players, but you've got to think about the bigger picture as well.
It feels like a bit of a moot point now, but there's a Paul Mitchell quote that stood out to me last summer when he joined, and that was that he isn't afraid to sell a club's big players. He's done it everywhere he's been, and he's never ever once regretted it because he knows and he backs himself to reinvest properly, which he did. Now, obviously, as I say, it's a moot point because he's going, and we know we probably won't get to see that play out under Paul Mitchell at Newcastle. But I think Eddie Howe will be on the same thing. He wants to keep the squad together as he does every summer, but I think he'll back himself to reinvest if the time comes where they do have to, get in a bit of money for someone.
I mean, you can't be cashing in on Gordon because you'd be strengthening as well a direct rival.
Yep.
It'd be nice though if the Saudi teams came and picked one of our players up for a fair whack, wouldn't it?
Yeah. They don't ever seem to be linked with Newcastle players, do they? In terms of central strikers, I have gone keep Alexander Isak, obviously, shock horror. I've put South Callum Wilson, obviously he would be going on a free, but I think it's maybe time for Wilson to go. And I've gone loan William Asula.
Loan William Asula. I knew you would be coming with that answer. Yeah, you keep Isak. Wilson goes on a free, as does Jamal Lewis, who we haven't mentioned. You haven't got him written down, have you? Asula is really, really interesting because it's a little bit like Miley. I think he's at the age where he needs first team development. He needs games week in, week out. But I also think Newcastle United probably need him in the squad to help with the schedule next season. We've seen flashes of brilliance from him. Obviously, he's still got a little bit of development to go. So, yeah, the only way I could see Asula being loaned out is if Newcastle kept Wilson, did that deal, and then signed another striker, which I don't think they're going to do.
For what it's worth, I don't think Newcastle will loan Will Asula. I think he will still be part of the squad next season. But I think if this was my keep or sell list, I would maybe just like a loan from, as we spoke about, I'm pretty sure it was last week's Monday show. I think top 6 of the champ, give him a season where he's going to play 40 odd games in the league and really see what he's worth, because he looked brilliant coming on in these flashes at Premier League level. But, as you've just mentioned there, it's a little bit of Lewis Miley where you don't know how quick he's developing without playing regular for football.
It would be interesting to see which position that team would play him.
Yeah.
Is he a right winger?
Central,
is he a centre
right
forward? Because obviously it looks like Eddie Howe's fancying him a bit more on the wing than up top. But yeah, unless they keep Callum Wilson on that pay as you play deal and then bring in another striker, I can't see Asula going. Just in terms of loans then, Aaron, Sanusi, who is tipped for big things, obviously made his debut against Bromley in the FA Cup, suffered an injury towards the end of last season, so didn't really get the chance to get many games under his belt. But he's tipped for big things, and he's got big ambitions. I spoke to him a few weeks back, and he wants to break into the first team. And you think, well, actually, we're there, 105 million for Gordon. Is that then where Sanusi maybe comes in and understudies to Harvey Barnes? Is that something you could see happening, or do you send him out on loan?
I personally don't think he would be, I don't think he'll be in and around the first team on a match day this season, because I think, look, he's only 18. I remember speaking to Eddie Howe last summer about Sanusi, and he was 17 at the time. He'd had a really good summer with Newcastle. He'd been on their tours. He played in the Cellar Cup. He looked fantastic. And Eddie Howe said, I don't want to loan him out because he's not ready yet. We need to oversee his development here. We need to make him stronger. We need to make him fitter. We need to get him sort of more savvy with how we play. I don't want him loaned out. So maybe they loan him out this season. They think maybe he's came on. Obviously, he's suffered a couple of injuries now, which is a little bit of a worry. He suffered a knee injury not so long ago. I would be loaning him out potentially, but I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Howe keeps him in the under-21 squad, and we maybe see him in the summer.
We've got Hearns as well, who was at Shrewsbury, I think he was, wasn't
That's where Newcastle signed him from. He went out on loan to Denmark. He's obviously Norwegian, so that sort of move looked good for him on paper. I'll be loaning him out again. I was quite impressed with him watching him in Australia, even though Newcastle's youngsters got absolutely hammered. He's looked good when I've seen him. I think he's got a big future, but I think I would probably be loaning him out again because I don't think he'll get much game time this season.
Yeah, my mistake. He went on loan to Alberg BK. How many games did he play? 5, and then 7 in the Superliga relegation round. So I've got a few games under his belt. QL
loan.
Is it done for him?
Potentially. Look, the thing with Grant Qual is he's had a very good end of the season. He's finally stayed at Newcastle for the first time since joining. He's ended the season really well in the under-21s as they reached the playoffs. But I think, I mean, he came out and did sort of quite a revealing interview recently and said, look, I need first team minutes. He's not going to get those at Newcastle United. I don't think he's ready to make that jump up. I think you give him one last loan deal and hope it doesn't go like it did at Hearts. It doesn't go like it did at Volendam. You hope that you just strike it lucky and get something like we saw with Minter at Feyenoord. And then, yeah, but look, it's a real crossroads for him at the minute. It's such a shame.
Because he's clearly got talent, and as you say, finished the season for the under-21s really strongly, scored 5 goals in the end. But it is a big summer for him, and you know it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about depth, what Newcastle United need. Surely some of these players, if they were good enough, they would be in that conversation about providing that depth, so Newcastle can go well in both cups, Europe and the Premier League.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we've seen it this season, haven't we? That Leo Shahar, who we haven't spoke about, the right back at Newcastle, who was signed from Wolves a few years back, he looks really, really impressive and has obviously been in matchday squads. We've seen Sean Neve for the second half of the season, pretty much a regular on the bench for Newcastle, even though he never got any game time. So there is opportunities for those youngsters to come through. So the fact we haven't seen Kowal in and around the first team, Ben Parkinson, who was obviously 2 seasons ago, was in there when they had a real injury crisis. He's obviously been with the under-21s, has been in matchday squads, and Kowal fits that bill as well. Alfie Harrison, these players, if they're going to make it, need to be in and around the first team on match days, and at the minute they haven't been.
And one thing is for certain that the squad needs additions, needs improving.
Yeah,
because the players we're keeping, that's not good enough to go on all 4 fronts, is it?
No, not at the moment. And I don't think it's that it's not good enough. I think you put Newcastle's 11 up against anyone in the league, they can probably go toe for toe for them. But on a season, it's just going to be as brutal as the Champions League, where, as you say, they're fighting in 4 competitions. Anyhow, we'll want to go deep in both domestic cups as well. That depth needs strengthening, and they need to add, 4 or 5 players and get some of those youngsters promoted as well if they're going to give them all a good go.
And just to clarify on Joe White, you're saying
sell.
I mean, how much are you going to get for Joe White? Not going to get much, are you?
No.
Who else was out on loan?
It's Jay Turner Cooks. He's still at
Charlie MacArthur, James Huntley out on loan.
Max Thompson was out on loan as well.
What's going to happen with Pivas?
Yeah, I mean, he's had an absolute stinker of a loan deal over in the Netherlands with...
Testing you now.
I want to say Den Haag. Is he at
I'm not
Den
even
Haag?
we'll have a quick Google, but yeah, I mean, he's
Willem too. Sorry, yeah. I mean, he came over from Serbia with a huge fanfare.
Played 5 times.
He's had a really, really shocking season in the Netherlands. Pretty much echoed what happened with Qual when he went to Volendam. So yeah, interesting summer for him. We've obviously got Antonio Cordero coming in from Malaga. It looks like he could go straight out on loan. Ajax have been tipped. You have got Vakhtang Salia, who will join in August. He looks fantastic over in Dynamo Tbilisi in Georgia. And obviously Joe White is going to come back from MK Dons.
He's 22, will be 23 in October. Sadly,
it's a big shame. Yeah. Big shame for him. But
you would say it's probably his time to depart and go elsewhere. Played 34 times last season.
In League
6
Two.
goals, 2 assists for MK Dons.
In League Two.
Well, you've got to earn your trade somewhere. But unfortunately, because he's definitely got ability. But
Eddie Howe really likes him. He's given him multiple opportunities, given him chances in the summer. He's been given him chances in the first team when needed. But yeah, I just don't think he's quite at that level, unfortunately.
So there we go. Keep, sell, alone. And as we said, what about 4 or 5 players we could see Newcastle United selling? Out on the keep one, I would say the only ones vulnerable for maybe being moved from keep to sell. Maybe Anthony Gordon, if it's a stupid bid. Trippier, if it's a big enough bid. The rest of them, though. Maybe Nick Pope. Keep them all. How many we've got keeping there? 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they're fair whacking it.
Yeah, but good 90% we're keeping on there.
But we're not giving Jamal Lewis a new contract.
No.
Just to be clear. Let us know in the comments your thoughts, ladies and gents. Do you disagree with any of our picks for keep, loan, or sell? We always like to hear from you. For myself and Aaron, we'll be back next week.